One of the questions that comes up all the time is, what about these hospital bills? How exactly do they break down? How do you make sense of it? There's no question, it leaves a lot of people scratching their heads. So I want to give you a little bit of an example here by taking inside this operating room. This is the hospital where I work, where I'm a neurosurgeon, and just having an operation performed in a room like this costs about $3,000 an hour. That's for starters. Come on in. Give you a couple of quick examples. If you look at a hospital bill, you might see an IV bag charge. It's an IV like this, about $280 just for the IV bag. That might strike people as very high. A stapler. This is a stapler that's often used in surgery. Something like this costs about $1,200. This is a chest tube. If someone has compression of one of their lungs, they might need a chest tube like this. That costs about $1,100. And you'll find examples like that really all over a room like this. Suture, something that's used in just about every operating room in the world. This type of suture over here costs about $200. And if you look at even devices like this is a needle that's used for biopsy. So if there's a concern that someone has a tumor, they would use a needle like this, and this is going to cost about $800. Now, it's important to keep in mind, if you ask the manufacturers of a device like this, why so much money? They'll say, well, it took years to develop something like this. The research and development costs are significant. Also, they're guaranteeing a certain level of effectiveness of this needle. That costs money as well. But something maybe you didn't know, when you look at a hospital bill, it's not just the cost of the supplies. There's also administrative costs that are built in. There's the cost of covering people who simply don't have insurance or can't pay. That's built into these costs as well. And finally, keep in mind that what is charged and what is ultimately paid are two very different. I'll tell you, the cost breakdown like I just gave you on lots of these different supplies, a lot of people simply never see. And what we have found is a lot of people don't care as well. If you're insured, some people may not even open the hospital bill. But there are about 50 million people uninsured out there, and they care very much about hospital bills like this. And what you can do is you can call the hospital and get a detailed breakdown. And while you're on the phone with the hospital, if the cost seems still too high or just hard to understand, you might be able to negotiate some of these prices down. And Ask the Doctor this week, we're going to answer this straight from the operating room, and it has to do with this scan right behind me. Stay with us. And we're back with SGMD. And Ask the Doctor this week, we're going to take your questions straight from the operating room. As I've always said, no insurance, no waiting. Peggy Sue from Salt Lake City asked this. A colleague of mine died suddenly while shoveling his snow. First we thought he suffered cardiac arrest, but turns out he had a ruptured aneurysm. He was only 45 years old. What causes an aneurysm, and why do they always strike so suddenly? Well, first of all, Peggy, I'm so sorry to hear about your friend. This is my area of expertise. As a neurosurgeon, we deal with ruptured aneurysms in the brain quite a bit. In fact, the scan that you see behind me shows the type of imaging that we often get if we're suspicious that someone might have an aneurysm. If my finger were a blood vessel, an aneurysm is a little blister on top of that blood vessel. It's just weak, and when blood flows in there, sometimes too much blood gets in there and can actually start to bleed into the brain. That's why it occurs so suddenly. Oftentimes people have a terrible headache. Sometimes people even feel like someone hit them with a 2x4, and then it's that bleeding in the brain that causes all the problems. In surgery here, we often try and put a little clip across that aneurysm so we can save the patient and make sure it never happens again. Well, just about 5 months from now, I'm going to be in New York City, competing in the New York City Triathlon. As I started thinking about this, I thought to myself, I don't want to do this alone. So we picked 6 CNN viewers from around the country to train with me and to be a part of all this fun. So today we're going to check in on 2 of them, Angie Brohard and Meredith Clark, see how they're doing. Take a look. All right, guys, you're doing pretty well. Just a month into this, a lot of work to do. And also Dean, Stanley, Ricky, and Linda, we're going to be looking for you soon as well, very soon. Coming up next on SGMD, we are talking about healthcare reform. Obviously, a lot of discussion about this, what exactly is happening, and what is going to happen. We're going to talk to a top conservative who says this: the Democratic plans are a mess, but she does concede as well that we do need to make healthcare more affordable and more available. The question is how? And what does it mean for you and your wallet? We're going to decipher it all in plain English.